Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today. This is called Harnessing EAC Data to Optimize Your Teaching Portfolio. We are honored to have Dr. April Massey, Interim Chief Academic Officer, leading this session today. She will also be joined by Dr. Rebecca Graham, Director of Institutional Assessment and Outcomes, Office of Planning and Institutional Effectiveness, as well as Dr. Helene Krauthammer, Professor of English and Coordinator of the English BA Program, College of Arts and Sciences. This will be a very interactive presentation. You can also put your questions in the chat box. I will be monitoring that. And with that, Dr. Massey, take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Cerna. If we can go to, there we go. Good afternoon, everybody. I can't see everybody right now because the slides are up, but hopefully we'll break away from the slide show and be able to see each other at some point. I just want to briefly go through what we have planned for you today. And the most important part of what we have planned for today is that it be interactive and that your feedback help drive the directions that today's session will move in. We want to discuss a couple of things around the annual faculty evaluation cycle. And that includes, how do we create a context for understanding the outcomes that we're all seeking to achieve? What's the shared responsibility across faculty and the university to ensure that the process is meeting the goals and objectives that it was developed to meet? And I'm going to close my door because people are talking, so give me 1 second, please. My apologies. What's the shared responsibility that we have, faculty and management, to ensure that the annual faculty evaluation process is one that supports the faculty self-study process, that supports the university's responsibility to using faculty evaluation outcomes to instruct where we are along university-wide effectiveness outcomes. And so that's one of the pieces we'll be discussing today. Recommendations for using data in academic storytelling, and that's a big piece of the work that Fatma and Rebecca have been doing. And Dr. Graham is going to give us a good and deep dive into the use of this new opportunity strategy through Blackboard. Then we're going to be looking at how we assess the approaches that we're using. Are we coming at faculty evaluation and the use of data to support the storytelling in ways that faculty members find helpful, instructive, able to support the growth and future development that you're seeking? Dr. Graham will then move us through a case study, allowing us to see application of the system and data sets. And then Dr. Krauthammer will move us through a faculty portfolio demonstration. So we're going to move into the agenda now. And the first request would be that actually we have 3 Menti requests. And so if we can roll the first Mentimeter. So I'm hopeful that you can all see the question, which I just lost.
Yep, and just so if you have not used Mentimeter before, there are 2 ways to join. If you go to menti.com, you can enter the code 54490659, or if you have your smartphone or smart device next to you, go ahead and scan that QR code on the screen. Once you have been logged in, just go ahead and give a thumbs up. I see 6 of you have done that. Excellent. Show us some love. Perfect, we have 13. So we'll be using this throughout the session today, so please feel free to input your submissions here. Okay. Excellent.
David, can you put the code also into the chat, so when I move to the next slide question, they will be able to access it?
You got it. So let me go ahead and put that code in the chat box as well.
And, can you also put, I can't see the question anymore.
Yep, so let's go to the next slide and then we'll see the question. I did put the code in the chat box as well. Again, that's 54490659.
So the reason I asked for the question to come back up, I can't see the responses coming up, but what I would really like for people to do is to be really clear and objective in terms of what it is that you want annual evaluation to be for you. What outcomes are you seeking when you engage in this process? And we described in discussing the agenda that the annual evaluation process is really the faculty members' self-study process. In the same way we do self-study for middle states, those of you that have professionally accredited programs, you're doing self-study, most of them annually now. What do you see this process to be for you in terms of your annual self-study? What are you looking to have available to you at the end of the line?
Dr. Massey, do you see the responses?
They're popping up now.
Okay.
Can you write more than one response?
You can write whatever, as much as you want.
Okay.
Can you scroll down? There was one that I think it started with something that used the word calibration in the bullet. There it is, recalibration. So I think we've got a good amount of feedback. And what I'd like to do is, before we go on to the second Menti poll, can we take the slides down so we can see each other as much as we can see each other in a virtual space? And I want to stay on target with time because I know we don't have endless time. But I think given some of the things that have been said on the Menti wall, that we need to discuss a little bit about how people are feeling, because there was a comment where someone used the word not seeing it as a place of victimization. That's significant. That's the feeling that people can walk away with, having engaged in a process that's only supposed to be about growth and development and support, right? I think that there was another comment that someone had when they said they had no idea what they should be expecting on the other side of this in terms of outcomes. That's really significant too, because that suggests that neither the contract or the two parties that negotiate the contract, management and the union, are doing a job that is keeping people informed and able to understand what the sets of expectations are. And then we had a lot of comments in between that where people were feeling that I see this as a time and a space where I can reflect on what I've done, do some self-assessment and make some decisions about what I need to do to continue to move the needle on my teaching, research, and service. And there were some comments that leaned toward using the opportunity to really build relationship with the institution, to look at the overarching set of goals and objectives that the institution has, and how the individual goals that you will set for yourself within a program, within a college or school should feed up to that. And so can we just go around the room? I want to take 5 people. I'm going to ask people to be brief, but can you talk to us all about where you feel that you are supported and able to use the process for the things that any of you wrote? And then we're going to follow up with another question that asks about where we're failing to meet you in terms of being supportive. So can we just have 4 or 5 people really quickly go about the room? And this is a safe space room. So anything that's here, you can share what you say. None of the rest of us have the right to kind of share outside of the space what someone else says. So I just think that's a covenant that we agree to. You can say here what you need to say so that we can help you and you can help us in terms of growth in understanding what process can do for us. But what you say should be seen as confidential within the walls of the space unless you choose to share it for yourselves. So
yeah, and I see Professor Cook has her hand raised.
Should be about that. But I also wanted to say that Professor Pearsall is on the call. And so we have met, and one of the things that's going to happen for opening Professional Development Day in January for the spring semester, we're not meeting on the 2nd. We'll give you a chance to kind of come slowly back to the institution, get into your offices and take your time across that day. We will meet on the 3rd across the day. We'll gather, the letter will come out before you break for the holiday vacation. We'll start somewhere between 9:30 and 10 with a continental breakfast. We'll have some sign-in. We're going to do some high-level remarks in terms of just bringing people up to speed. I don't think most of you have met the new chief officer for student development and success. I don't know if many of you have met Dr. McMurray, who's the chief of staff to the president. So you get some high-level overviews, space, budget, those kinds of things, enrollment, high-level from an assets perspective. Then we're going to do an icebreaker where we're going to really work on building teams, supporting collegiality, have a little bit of fun, have a snack break, and then you're going to do 2 sessions that are going to be directed by union leadership around the contract, these 3 articles: evaluation, promotion, and tenure. The 60, 90 days that I've been in this seat, the largest number of questions that have come to me have been around those areas. People feel like it has been made so cumbersome, so hard to understand, so feeling like a got you place where faculty members are not expected to be successful. So we've been working really hard on this. So we're partnering with the union. We're giving them the space of that day to really lead faculty members through an understanding of those 3 articles. Management will be available, will be supportive. We'll provide the space, we'll provide the food and breaks, and we're going to cap the day by bringing in a speaker who's going to talk about some higher ed things that are important to all of us. And then we'll finish the day with a cocktail reception, a little bit of music. You can dance if you want to, but we really want to start the semester from a place of positivity and with faculty members really driving what their experience looks like on that day. And so we're not going to be imposing an agenda on you. It's going to be built by your union leadership. And so Dr. Puaka, I think that in that space, we can get to all of the concerns that you just put on the table. So thank you. Okay, so we have a second. What time do we finish?
1 o'clock.
Oh, okay, we're gonna go quickly. Let's just do one more. Can we do one more Menti or should we move on, Fatma?
Oh, we can do one more Menti.
And then I won't talk so much. We'll just let it come up so people can kind of see.
Yep.
What we'll do is we'll do Mentis 2 and 3, but we'll actually just let them populate so people can see. Let's do 2 first and then we'll do 3. And I think this is a really important one. It dovetails with the other. What supports are vital to your full participation and success in the annual evaluation cycle? If now you've decided, you know what this is supposed to do for you, these are the outcomes you're trying to achieve, how do we help you get there in terms of what supports do you need to really feel like I understand what's being asked of me. I understand the parts of this that I control. I understand the success I want to meet with. This is what I need from the institution. And while these are coming up, I just want to make sure everybody's clear about something. You have no requirement of using TK20 to archive your portfolio documents. And we'll talk a little bit about that on the 3rd. Some of these questions point out something. I know that a number of you have come into the institution new this year, and there is usually starting in August, early September, new faculty academy kicks off. That's not off the table. The new faculty academy will start in January, and so there are some things that we clearly know that we need to have in place to support you. We're also going to be hiring an associate provost who is dedicated solely to faculty affairs, the faculty life cycle. That includes how you were brought into the institution, orientation, evaluation, promotion, tenure, sabbatical, post-tenure academic life. So these things are not lost on us, that these are necessary pieces that we do not have in place to give faculty members the supports that they need. The other piece of it is if anybody is coming up for planning to submit for tenure and promotion for the September 2024 deadline, we can put in place individually or in small groups some training sessions around the processes. The due date can't be changed by an individual. It has to be negotiated, and we can talk about that. And Professor Pearsall is here. I'm sure he will talk about that on the 3rd. Can we put up the final Menti wall? And you can keep putting your answers in, but I want to move us to this, and then I'm going to stop talking so that Dr. Graham is able to share the hard work that she's been doing and wants to share with you on using this resource. And then I want Dr. Krauthammer to be able to share the scenario that she's developed to show us how to apply. So I think this is the important thing about all of the responses that are coming in. Everybody's already on the road, right? And so the responsibility of us all, us to each other, is to make sure that people feel supported as you're moving down the road, because we will all encounter spaces where we're not as familiar with expectation. Maybe we don't feel that we're as, we have the same level of skill across all parts of a process. And these are the places that I think we really have to come together in partnership to ensure that people have the things that they need. Can we flip back to the presentation, Fatma? And then we're going to segue quickly into Dr. Graham and Dr. Krauthammer to be able to have their pieces. And I'm sorry if I took too long. And we can capture the mentees and send them out, correct?
Yep,
Okay.
that's correct. Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna leave so I think that you understand the second bullet in terms of a shared faculty university responsibility. And I think that both sides, there's some opportunity to really build relationship to help ensure that we're coming to the table together to keep answering the questions, keep answering the questions, keep answering the questions. But in looking at data and opportunities to use it, I think that you have a slide that actually has some comments in the.
It's the one before this? This is the agenda.
No, but that slide that you're showing me, there were some notes that helped me kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so building toward a common approach. And I think this is the thing that everybody keeps talking about. Okay, well, it seems to me like over there, they're doing it one way, but over here, we're doing it another way. And it seems to me, so we have to, this is about the assignment piece and the data piece, but we have to really just align toward a common approach. And the thing that we should think about at the teaching, and remember, teaching is a third of the expectation of faculty evaluation. Sometimes I see portfolios that have beautifully developed activities. I mean, they are beautifully developed, but they're not at all aligned with the goals and objectives for student learning for the course. And so we've got to back all the way there to make sure that courses are aligned with the approved university goals and objectives for them, but that activities and assessments align with the expectations of those goals and objectives. And so if that piece is off, then the evaluation is going to be difficult, and it's going to be difficult on both sides. So aligning from the university approved goal and objective statement of student learning outcomes for a course, all the way through assignments to assessments, and then looping it back. Data analysis and results from an initial course assignment. So what does that even mean? And how are you certain that the assignment is valid and really does answer to the expected outcomes written for the course? Once we are clear about those things being accurate, reliable, then we can start thinking about how we apply an intervention based on the result that we get. So what happens, and I think that because 16 weeks is not a lot of time, and so you have an agenda and you set it up and you don't necessarily build in space for processes around teaching and learning to be iterative. But what happens when the grades come back and they're not great, right? And those grades are aligned with a certain piece of content for a course, and we just power on to the next thing. Those things we have to pay attention to. So looking at the data, following up, giving opportunity for students to engage in a process of feedback and experimentation with the pieces of fact, the pieces of information that maybe they were struggling around. So we kind of pull them back, and then we can look at what we find, and then we can say, so go back to Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook teaches in a way that students are exposed, have a chance to experiment with, they're assessed. That assessment then feeds what the next level of exposure can be, how students are allowed to experiment with that content, then they are assessed. So everything feeds back to the next thing. So let's say that you have your first assessment, your second weekend in the 16 weeks, and students, 50% of your class fails to meet criterion. The other 50% of your class barely meets criterion. Do you power through to the next set of modules, which is content that's built on the content that they're not No, you're going to go back and you're going to pick up. And then those interventions, as you then look at the next assessment and you see that the scores improve dramatically in terms of data points, Dr. Cook can absolutely tie the change in student performance to the intervention to her teaching. Those are the things that you got to be looking for. And those are the things that you are able to demonstrate when you go back to those things. So Dr. Graham, I'm going to pitch to you. I'm going to stop talking. This will not be the last time that we will meet around these things. We're going to come back together in January on the 3rd. We're going to spend the entire day on these things. I'll be there for the entire day. Professor Pearsall is going to drive this with his team, but I'll be there to support. We'll be available to do individual meetings with anyone that's coming up for promotion and tenure in the fall of 2024. And then I will be tapping some of you faculty members to sit on the committee that will be looking to help us hire the new associate provost for faculty affairs. Thank you. I'm sorry I took too long, and I see Fatma Spacey's frowning at me. It's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Massey. Thank you. Dr. Graham?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Massey, for setting the context in the way that you did. Perfectly teased me up, and the context you set is so important. So we're now going to move into to some EAC reports. So take this model that Dr. Massey is talking about and turn it over to this new tool in Blackboard. So we're going to use a case study to demonstrate this. This case study is relevant for all faculty who are using test questions or rubrics in Blackboard to assess student learning. So let's say we have a professor who in the first half of the fall semester is this professor is using oral communication to assess student learning. And so they're in turn using an oral communication rubric to assess, for example, recordings of practice speeches uploaded to students in Blackboard. Students performed really well on the introduction and attention getter criterion of the rubric. So if you're looking at this EAC report, you can see that's right next to number 1 there, which validates, right, the professor's decision to focus intently on introductions to speeches early in the semester. So we're getting some really good data here. You can see that the introduction and attention getter rubric criterion in the first row of the EAC report on this slide. So if you look at the bottom of the slide, the professor set their target for success at 0.80, which essentially translates to earning 80% or above on each rubric criterion. In the introduction and attention getter criterion, students averaged 0.87, which surpasses that 0.80 target. And you'll notice the 0.87 average in that column, marked average. Now, look at the pie chart. You'll notice that 80.5% of students scored in the highest level of the rubric. If the professor had further identified success as 80% of their students scoring within that highest level of the rubric, then they will have met that target as well. So this EAC report helps professors see where in the rubric students have succeeded across those rubric criteria. Okay, this is again a report that you would get if you built a rubric into Blackboard. Then you can link over to EAC to get the reports from your classes. So at the same time, you'll see in that next line, number 2, that students experience some challenges with the overall delivery of their speeches. Although 0.75 is still pretty good, the professor wanted to see those scores increase by the end of the semester and meet the 0.80 target. So remember, this is for a practice speech. So what does the professor do? Professor starts to scaffold the learning in the second half of the semester. The professor adds a self-evaluation activity and a peer evaluation or peer feedback activity to the students' assignments. Using the same rubric that the professor uses, students then assess their own practice speeches and then assess another student's practice speech via Blackboard. And this provides 3 levels of assessment: professor, self, and peer, using the same rubric. Students were then asked to focus specifically on the delivery of the speeches in the self-assessment and in their peer feedback. Students also provided the professor with qualitative feedback on these scaffolded activities. That kind of goes back to one of the questions that was asked earlier about how to fold in qualitative data. And in partnership with C.A.L, the professor gives students direct access to C.A.L's one-button studio, where students can record their final speeches and review their recordings before uploading their final speeches to Blackboard. Okay, so if you could move to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so when the professor reassesses the students' final speeches at the end of the semester, student performance on the delivery rubric criterion has increased significantly. You can see that from the practice speech data to the final speech data. You can see that increase from 0.75 to 0.83. Okay, so again, look under that average column and also the levels of achievement distribution columns where you can see the matching of the percentages to the pie chart. The percentages in the level of achievement column are matched by those slices, and the professor now has a visual that demonstrates the positive impact of those course level interventions. Okay, and this is stuff that this is reporting that you could download directly from EAC, and those visuals you can take directly from EAC. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so when you assess your students' learning through test questions and rubrics that you embed in your Blackboard courses, you can view these kinds of resulting data visuals in EAC, okay, in those EAC reports, and you can download those reports directly through Blackboard. And here, this is an example of what your storytelling could look like in a template form, the story that I just told. At least this is the basis of your story, right? And this, of course, could augment your narrative and the data you've provided to support your narrative. So this is a template that we can provide to give you that kind of substantive foundation.
Dr. Graham, we have a question from Dr. Mehef from in the chat. David, can you please read it?
Yep, so Dr. Ham said, is it possible to set up rubrics in both Blackboard and EAC in 6 categories as opposed to 4?
Yes, you can set up your rubrics in 4, 5, 6, any number of rubric rows, and that would probably affect how you set your target. And if you need some guidance or all that, we're available for that. And I think we have the slide. Is that the next slide, Fatma, where we highlight EAC real quick, or do we do that after Helene goes? That's at the end, right? That's after Helene. Okay, so we'll move over to Dr. Krautheimer, and then we can highlight at the end, right, how you can get a hold of us to get that kind of guidance. Thank you for that question.
Yep. And just a note that I did put the template, if you'd like to use it, in the chat box. Go ahead and click on that link. Feel free to make a copy of this for your personal use. And Dr. Krautheimer?
Okay, thank you. Next slide. There we go. Okay, so I think I'm the poster child for using EAC visual data in portfolios, except that we just got the EAC tool last May. So obviously it didn't appear in my last year's portfolio, but it's going to appear in this one. And I've given actually 2 webinars on using rubrics, and one in May and one just recently in November. So I don't know, David, if you want to put a link to 1 or 2 of those, because I think some of the questions here are, how do we do this? Where is it? And that's addressed in those 2 webinars that I did. But what you're seeing is the visual data of a rubric that I've been using to assess writing. I call it the totem rubric: thesis, organization, development, usage, and mechanics to grade. I use this for grading essays. And what you see here is from my Foundations of Writing course from last spring, essay number 1, which is the first essay they do, as you would imagine. And what the graph shows you is, well, look, they did so well in finding a good thesis, and almost well in organization, and not quite that well in development, but the green areas are the ones you want to really look at, because that shows no evidence. And that, of course, was the grammar, which is one of my specialty areas. So what do? So now look at essay number 5 at the end of the semester. There's the impact. You see the green has gone. How did that happen? There's still some of that red, meaning needs much improvement in the mechanics area. But if you're curious about what that rubric is, I'm happy to share it with you. But mechanics has to do with spelling and punctuation, and gosh, you can't get commas right ever. So anyway, that stays red. But next slide, please. How did they get from essay number 1 to essay number 5? Next slide, please. I think it's in the next. Oh, wait, it's not in the next slide. Sorry.
No, so David, hold second, Doctor. You on the? I know what you're referring to. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, first of all, I do have them revise essays constantly. There is no limit to how many. I use unlimited for how many submissions they could do for assignments in Blackboard. This is all from Blackboard. And by the way, to answer your question, William, yeah, you can make a rubric as big as you want in Blackboard. You wouldn't want to do that, but you can have as many criteria as you want. And Blackboard feeds directly into EAC. So this is I call it the error analysis sheet, which I've been using over a number of years. I even had students develop this one. It matches up with that rubric, the thesis, organization, development, usage, and mechanics. Each of those blue things is a hyperlink. Most of them work, but it's been over the years. And students, it's a grammar sheet to, not just grammar, but it links to places on the web where they can learn about what is faulty parallelism or fragments or whatever. And what students are doing here, I actually use the term self-efficacy myself to say that students are responsible for, after I've reviewed their paper, of matching up their essay errors into this chart, and then using this as a kind of record of their own progress as they go. And as you see, you can go from essay number 1 to essay number 5. And I actually do have a lot of data showing that the errors go down. And the EAC data, really shows that that's what's been happening. So this is a great tool for doing scholarship of teaching and learning. Remember that? It's a great way of combining what you're doing in the classroom with what you're writing about for your scholarly articles. Because I have way back in my publication list an article about using this method to improve student writing. So anyway, I think I'm almost done. We can go back to either one of those slides. So anyway, this is going to appear in my next portfolio. In fact, it's already there. The way I do a portfolio is I just keep an ongoing Google Doc, that Google folder. I have a folder called Portfolio, and I divided that into 3 folders called, scholarships, teaching, what's the other one? Service, and have a narrative running. And I just keep the narrative running. And so it's not, I kind of think of it as a healthy process by which I compile all the stuff I've been doing over the semester and look back at it from time to time, because that's where I store all my stuff. I think I'm done with my portion. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Krauthammer. And we'll look at the last slide before handing it off to Dr. Massey for the final words. So if you do have any questions or more information about Blackboard outcomes and the EAC tool, I do want to highlight our team member, Grace Kent. She's an instructional designer as well as the outcomes assessment coordinator here on the C.A.L team. I'll put her email in the chat box. That is grace.kent@udc.edu. We have one more survey. If you see that on your screen, you can go ahead and scan that with your phone. I'll also put the link in the chat box. This is our general C.A.L feedback survey where you can go ahead and let us know about this webinar or any future webinars that you would like to have. I do want to thank Dr. Krauthammer and Dr. Graham for your expertise. Thank you for joining our call today. And Dr. Massey, before we conclude, any final thoughts?
I just wanted to say I appreciate people showing up today, and I appreciate just the honesty around how you're feeling about what you're doing, how you feel supported or not. And I think what we need to do, if Fatma and David and Rebecca would assist me, I think we need to create a survey that allows faculty members to say, these are the three things that I need immediately to feel like I can meet with success in the job that I have at UDC. And then I will conference with Professor Pearsall, and we'll see how we can bake some of that into what happens on the 3rd. But I think from there, what we need to do is build out a routine, occurring series of faculty development support meetings around the topics that you identify, because it's time for us to put some real structure around what the needs of faculty members on the campus are. You drive outcomes for students, and those outcomes drive out the institutional outcomes. And so to continue to pretend like we don't have to address this head on is not fair to you, it's not fair to the institution, and most of all, it's not fair to students. So if we can conference Fatma, Rebecca, David, and get a survey up and out, maybe by tomorrow, but Fatma was just shaking her head until I said tomorrow, but clearly by next week.
Sure.
And if you can just make that top of mind, and I think we just have to do a better job of engaging all voices so that the things that are decided are not, they're decided in terms in a context of shared governance, and they're not imposed. And I think that that's where we're missing opportunity to be of our best service to you. So thank you, Fatma, for inviting me, and Rebecca and David, Elaine, for including me and allowing me to talk too much. But,
No,
Dr.
no.
Massey, we have one question. Dr. Purcell have his hand up, so can we take his question?
For sure.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Pearsall?
Hello, everyone. First of all, Dr. Massey, thank you so much. This was really, really good, really informative, and thank everyone for participating. One of the concerns I think that may have been shared is, as we go through this process and we develop something that works for faculty, how does that get translated to those who evaluate faculty, so that there is a common understanding of what you shared? I think much of what I've heard, and faculty certainly can correct me if I'm wrong, is that what could be a 4 in one component can be a 2 in another. So there's a lack of consistency. So I guess I ask you, once you work with us, what's going to be given to the chairs, to the deans, and others? And that's all. But I want to really applaud you. I've learned so much. And Dr. Krautheimer, woohoo! Great job, great job. You got a lot to do come January. You're leading that session. I didn't say that, but anyway. All right. So thank you.
Professor Pearsall, though, before we go, I think that, and I think we have to think about this as a community. I think rather than have separate trainings for faculty members, chairs, assistant and associate deans, I think we all need to be in the space together. So we have one voice all together, moving our understanding the same way, because I think that it's in the separateness that the translation things get lost. And so I think that maybe on the opening week or sometimes shortly after, we have an opportunity to do the training that Dr. Apuaka suggested for DEPC members with chairs and deans, and that the assistant and associate provost and the provost sit in that space too, and then we're all talking one voice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because a rating is a rating, and it shouldn't be that it's a rating because I teach speech pathology versus I teach math. It's a rating, and the definition is operationalized in the same way for every discipline. So I think we have some opportunities.
Dr. Massey, Dr. Jowers, do you have for us more 5-10 minutes?
You talking to me?
Dr. Jowers have her hands up. Can you?
Oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Jowers, please.
Thank you. I was trying to unmute myself. I apologize. I came in late. I've been advising students all morning, but I wanted to address the fact that community college faculty are not well represented by this portfolio, by this evaluation process. And maybe I missed it on the front end, but has there been any discussion, or will there be any discussion about how these ratings are going across campus for someone, a 3 and a 4, the way it looks now is out of reach for community college faculty. I don't know if that's, well, I'm not going to give an answer. How is that going to be addressed?
So I'm glad you asked this, because I think that the most important part of the faculty evaluation cycle is often missed. And that's the development of the predetermined criteria. That is driven by program faculty. So that's not imposed by a chair. That's not imposed by a dean. That's not imposed by a provost. So if I'm a speech pathologist, I sit with my speech pathology colleagues and we talk about the standards that are imposed on us by our disciplinary bodies, right? We write the standards that suggest how we should teach, what we should teach, how it all should connect, what that means for our research, what that means for our service. If faculty members are driving that part of process, they control better than 50% of what can happen in an evaluation cycle. But this is the other piece. I think that to say, or the feeling that 3s and 4s are out of reach for certain segments of our university community is also not true. So I'm going to use Dr. Cook. She's probably sorry that she raised her hand at all. Dr. Cook participates on a couple of national forums through Complete College America and a couple of others, building out knowledge around how to bring students through the community college door and have access to high quality competitive education that prepares them to participate in professions if they choose to leave at the end of the 2 years or to transition up to next level of education, right? The level 3 score asks you to demonstrate how you are using your expertise to influence at the domestic or international level, new knowledge, new protocols, new whatever. That clearly is a 3 score. Now, I can't tell you how that might, if anyone's written that or supported her in understanding that that's the kind of engagement that aligns with the score of 3. But if I'm her, that's what I would be telling in terms of my story about my influence nationally and why that aligns with the score of 3. She's been engaged with those bodies for 3, 4, 5 years now. She sits on national level committees. She's invited back annually to be a part of these conversations, and she's influencing the way that they are shaping the policy statements that those organizations are putting out. Those are that's at least an outstanding score. So I think that to suggest that the scores are tailored to certain segments of the university population isn't true. If we need to do more work to give people examples of how it fits in any one place, that I'm willing to be available to work with Professor Pearsall to make sure that everybody gets.
Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to thank everyone for their time, especially Dr. Massey, Dr. Krauthammer, and Dr. Graham. I did put the links again in the chat box, but if you want to save the chat for your records, click on those 3 dots at the bottom right corner of your chat box. That'll say Save Chat. You'll find that under your Documents folder with Zoom. So thank you everyone again for your time today. This was a great session. I took so many notes. I see so many great comments in the chat box about the presentation, Dr. Massey. So thank you again, everyone, for coming today. Please stay warm. Happy holidays. And we hope to see you very soon for the next session. Have a good afternoon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, David. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.